Blackmail order bride rejected for her color, until a billionaire farmer saw her as his perfect. Elena Carter stepped down from the train with a single worn suitcase held close to her chest. The late afternoon sun warmed the platform, but her hands felt cold. Letters and promises had carried her across states to Riverbrook, a place she believed might finally welcome her. A few townsfolk paused to stare. Their murmurs moved like a low ripple through the crowd. Some eyes curious, others unkind. Clayton Reed pushed through the onlookers, boots striking hard against the wooden planks. He looked her up and down, his expression tightening as if something precious had been ruined. He had written her those letters. He had invited her here. Elena waited for his smile, for acknowledgement, for the simple human warmth she had been holding on to. Instead, he stepped back. "I am not taking you," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I did not know you were like this." Laughter sparked. A few faces lit with cruel delight. Elena felt her heartbeat echo in her chest, each thud hollow. No words came. Her throat locked. She tried to steady her breath, but her fingers trembled around the handle of her suitcase. Clayton turned away as if she were nothing at all. The train behind her pulled off and the crowd began to disperse. Elena stood alone. No home, no welcome, no place to go. But before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe so we can keep bringing stories like this to you. It truly helps more than you know. The platform grew quiet. Elena's eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. Her future had changed in a single moment, and she had no idea where the next step would lead. Elena remained on the platform long after the laughter faded. Her suitcase felt heavier than her body, yet inside it were only a few dresses, a shawl her mother had sewn, and the letters that had once felt like lifelines. She had folded each of Clayton Reed's words so carefully, believing them to be true. He had written about Riverbrook as if it were a place where new beginnings bloomed easily, where a woman like her could finally belong without needing to prove herself at every turn. He spoke of companionship, of shared meals, of gentle evenings by lantern light. The idea of that life had held her through long nights of silence. Growing up, Elena had learned early what rejection felt like. She had been reminded of it in stores where shop owners watched her every step, in church pews where families shifted so they would not sit beside her, in classrooms where teachers praised her intelligence quietly, as if appreciation had to be hidden. She had become accustomed to walking with her shoulders tucked in slightly, taking less space than she deserved. But she had kept hoping. Something in her had refused to stop believing that somewhere there might be a place where a woman like her could breathe without caution. So when Clayton's letters came, full of kind greetings and small details of his life, Elena responded with cautious joy. Her replies were thoughtful, sometimes hesitant, but full of sincerity. She described her love for reading, her wish to teach, her desire for a simple but warm home. She believed he had chosen her for her mind, her heart, her steadiness. She had believed he saw her. That hope was what gave her the courage to board the train, leaving behind everything familiar. Now those same letters felt like ashes in her pocket. She took a breath and tried to steady her shaking hands. The stares still hovered around her, though quieter now. Some people simply watched with blank expressions, others with judgment. A few looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to step closer. Rejection was one thing. Being rejected while others celebrated it was a wound that cut deeper. She felt it all the way to her bones. Not far from the platform, Grant Whitaker had paused in the shade of a carriage shed. He had witnessed the scene without stepping forward. He knew Clayton Reed well enough to recognize the man's pride and smallness. Grant owned one of the largest farmlands in Riverbrook, yet he carried himself without the arrogance that often accompanied wealth. His clothes were simple, work-worn at the edges. His eyes, however, were sharp and observant. As Clayton walked away, Grant watched Elena, not with pity, but with quiet understanding. He saw the way she kept her chin lifted even as her eyes glistened. He saw the quiet strength in how she clung to dignity when it would have been easier to collapse. He had seen Riverbrook's cruelty before. It had not surprised him, but something about the stillness of this moment held his attention. Most people would leave. Most would search for the nearest road and vanish from town. Yet Elena did not move. She was wounded, but she did not run. Grant stepped away from the shadows, slow and deliberate. He did not want to startle her. The wind tugged softly at the loose strands of her hair as she looked out across the small town she had imagined so differently. She had dreamed of a home. Instead, she had been handed humiliation. But Grant Whitaker understood something the others did not. Strength often revealed itself in the silence after heartbreak, in the moment a person chooses to stand rather than fold. And Elena Carter, even in her pain, was still standing. Grant approached with a steady, measured pace, boots soft against the wood. Elena heard him before she saw him, but she did not look up at first. She was bracing herself. Another comment, another stare, another reminder of where she did not belong. But when she finally lifted her eyes, she met a gaze that held none of that. "I saw what happened," he said carefully, not apologizing for the town, not asking her to pretend it had not hurt, just acknowledging the truth. Elena tried to form a reply, but her voice caught. Grant did not push. He simply nodded once, as if he understood more than she said. "There is a carriage waiting," he continued. "I live outside Riverbrook. You are welcome to come rest, only if you choose to." She searched his face for mockery, for pity, for hidden intent. But his expression was calm and respectful, the kind of expression she had only rarely seen in her life. The kind that came from a person who did not need to prove anything. With quiet hesitation, she nodded. Grant picked up her suitcase as though it weighed nothing. He did not offer his hand to guide her like she was fragile. He walked beside her instead, matching her pace. As they left the station, whispers began again. "That is Grant Whitaker, taking her? What does he think he is doing? She will bring trouble." The words floated around them like dust, but Grant did not turn his head. He opened the carriage door for Elena and waited while she stepped in. She kept her gaze forward, determined not to let the town see any sign of the ache still burning in her chest. The road to the farm was quiet. Fields stretched wide and golden under the late sunlight. The farmhouse came into view slowly, its white paint softened by age, windows bright against the wide porch. It was large but not boastful. It felt lived in, rooted, real. Grant led her inside without asking questions. The air smelled faintly of cedar and bread. He paused just inside the doorway. "You do not owe me conversation," he said. "You may rest first. There is a guest room upstairs. Water is fresh. Food will be waiting whenever you are ready." Elena nodded. She wanted to thank him, but her voice was still too unsteady. Instead, she met his eyes and held the gratitude there. Upstairs, the room was simple but warm. A clean quilt, a small vase of dried lavender on the table, a window that opened to a view of open sky. She sat on the bed, fingers sinking into the fabric, and breathed for what felt like the first time all day. Later, when she came downstairs, Grant had left a plate on the wooden table. Soup still warm, bread soft and fresh. No one watched her while she ate. No one judged how slowly she lifted each bite. The quiet felt like a kindness she had not expected. After she finished, she wandered softly through the house, guided more by feeling than intention. Her steps led her to a large door at the end of the hallway. She opened it gently. Inside, shelves reached to the ceiling. Old books lined every wall, their spines worn, pages smelling of history and time. Dust lay peacefully over the surfaces, as though the room had been waiting, untouched. Elena stepped forward, heart slowing, mind settling. Something in this place felt familiar, though she had never seen it before. Something was calling to her. Something that would change everything. The library's quiet seemed to hold its breath with her. Elena moved slowly between the tall shelves, fingertips brushing over worn bindings, until she stopped at a row of thick record books stacked unevenly near the window. They were old, older than Riverbrook's polished history liked to admit. She pulled one free, dust rising in a soft cloud. The leather cracked as she opened it. Inside were maps, not just any maps, detailed plots of farmland, creeks, mills, and homesteads. Riverbrook before the neat fences and proud family names. And there, written in faded but unmistakable ink, Samuel Carter. Her heart beat hard once, then again, quicker. She knew that name. Her mother had whispered it like a prayer. Her grandfather, a man she never met but always felt tethered to. A man remembered only through fragments and silence. She turned the page. More records? Land deeds, signatures, boundaries, so much land. The room tilted slightly as realization settled. Her grandfather had owned this. Not a small piece, not a lonely plot. A vast portion of Riverbrook, Land so wide it touched the same fields that people bragged belonged to the town's oldest families. Elena sank into the chair by the window, the book spread open in her lap. The ink had grown faint with age, but the truth remained. This was not just a coincidence. This was heritage. Footsteps approached behind her, steady and familiar. Grant stood in the doorway, leaning slightly, eyes reading her expression before reading the pages. "You found something," he said softly. Elena nodded. "These records, they are real. My grandfather was here. He lived here. He built here." Grant stepped closer, brows drawn in thoughtful concentration. He was careful not to touch the book without asking. "May I see?" She slid the volume toward him. He studied the map, then the names written alongside Samuel Carter's. Whitaker, Alden, Reed, Clayton Reed. The same family that had rejected her at the station. Grant exhaled slowly. "I have seen land like this change hands before. Some transfers were legal, others." He trailed off, shaking his head. "This looks older than any modern registry." Elena turned another page. Letters pinned between sheets. A correspondence addressed to Samuel Carter. Words of warning. Requests for protection. Mentions of threats. And then, one final letter, unsigned, its ink darker, its message sharp. "You will leave this land, or this land will be taken." Her hands trembled. They forced him out. Grant did not rush to answer. He lowered into the chair across from her and let the silence settle first. "Riverbrook has stories it does not tell," he said quietly. "Your grandfather's story may be one of them." Elena closed the book carefully, pressing her palms flat to still the shake in them. "If I speak this aloud, they will laugh. Call it fantasy. They will say I am trying to take what never belonged to me." Grant met her eyes, steady and calm. "Or you will be the first person to tell the truth in a room that has avoided it for generations." Elena swallowed. The wound from the station still burned inside her. The memory of laughter, the sting of humiliation. She feared giving them another opportunity to strip her dignity bare. "What if they do it again?" she asked. "What if I stand in front of them and they tear me apart a second time?" Grant leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "You stood your ground when everyone expected you to break," he said. "That kind of strength is not something they can take. Not unless you hand it to them." His words did not erase her fear, but they gave it shape. And things with shape could be faced. Over the following days, they continued to search the library. Grant brought additional records from the county archive. Elena pieced together timelines, transactions, and signatures. The story grew clearer. Samuel Carter had not sold his land. It had been taken, forced, divided among the families who now held the highest positions in Riverbrook, including Clayton Reed's bloodline. Every discovery felt like a pulse of grief and fire combined. This was not just about belonging anymore. This was about truth stolen, history erased, a legacy denied. Elena closed the final ledger one evening and looked out the window where the sun dipped behind fields her family once owned. She had been rejected for the color of her skin, but what they feared most was something far deeper. She had a rightful place here, and she was ready to claim it. The town hall was already crowded when Elena and Grant arrived. Sunlight filtered through tall glass windows, catching dust in the air. People filled every seat, some leaning against walls, others whispering behind hands. Riverbrook loved a spectacle, and today it had one. Clayton Reed stood near the front with his family, shoulders squared, smugness settled across his face like a familiar jacket. Elena walked forward slowly, every step measured. Her heart beat heavy, but her back stayed straight. The memory of the train station flickered through her mind, but she did not let it slow her. She came to reclaim something much older than an insult. Clayton's voice broke through the hum of conversation, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Well, look who came crawling back." He smiled like someone sure of victory. "You think you belong here now? Because you spent a few days hiding in a farmhouse?" No one laughed this time. The silence was different, curious, waiting. Elena did not respond to him. She took her place at the speaker's table. Grant stood behind her, quiet support, never overshadowing. The council members watched her carefully, their expressions unreadable. She began by telling them who she was, not the woman they saw at the train station, not the one mocked and humiliated. She spoke about her family, her mother's stories, The man called Samuel Carter, who built a life here long before the town became what it was now. Clayton scoffed loudly. Do not waste our time. Anybody can make up a sweet little story about a relative. That does not mean it is true. He stepped forward, resting his hand on the table as if to push her words aside. This is an attempt to grab land you never owned. Plain and simple. Whispers rolled through the hall. Some people nodded. Others frowned. Doubt hung in the air. Elena reached into her satchel and pulled out a thick envelope. She laid its contents carefully across the table. Land deeds, survey maps, letters, all bearing the name Samuel Carter. All older than any of the polished documents Riverbrook shared in museums. Clayton's confidence faltered for the first time. A councilwoman leaned forward. Where did you get these? From the Whitaker Estate Library, Elena answered. And from the State Archive in Jefferson. The documents have already been authenticated. Grant stepped forward and handed over the verification papers. Official signatures, seals, dates. The council members studied them carefully, whispering among themselves. The room grew tense. Even breathing sounded loud. Clayton's father tried to cut in. This proves nothing. It could be misinterpreted. Another councilman held up the deed. This signature here matches the recorded ledger from 1894. The land belonged to Samuel Carter. There is no record of lawful sale. The transfer to the Reed family is missing required approval pages. Clayton's face drained of color. That cannot be. That is a mistake. Check again. The councilman did check again, and again. Finally, he looked up. This transfer was forged. Gasps filled the room. People who once laughed at Elena now stared as if seeing her for the first time. A woman near the back murmured, all this time, that land belonged to her family? Clayton stepped back, mouth opening and closing without words. His status, his confidence, his legacy, it all cracked right there in the open. The chairwoman of the council cleared her throat, voice steady. Under state law, original ownership rights are to be restored when unlawful seizure is proven. Therefore, effective immediately, ownership of the land in question returns to Elena Carter. The words echoed, strong and irreversible. People stood, some in shock, some in awe, some unsure where they now stood in this new version of Riverbrook. Elena let the moment settle inside her, not as triumph, not as revenge, but as truth finally spoken aloud. Clayton's eyes met hers. No arrogance remained, just disbelief. The power he once held had slipped away, and there was nothing he could do to reclaim it. Elena turned and began walking out of the hall. Grant followed, close but not crowding. Outside, the air felt different, lighter, real. She had not raised her voice. She had not shouted. She had not begged. She stood, she spoke, and the truth carried its own weight. The land was hers again. Her family's story lived once more. Riverbrook would never be the same. The weeks that followed felt strange, almost unreal, as if Riverbrook had shifted on its axis. One morning, the same people who once whispered behind cupped hands now paused when Elena passed, their eyes softer, unsure. The power that once weighed on her shoulders now felt lighter, steadier, yet inside her there was no hunger for revenge. Only a quiet, thoughtful calm. Elena stood at the edge of the large open field that was now legally hers again. The grass moved gently in the wind and the old wooden fence leaned tiredly against time. Grant walked toward her with 2 steaming cups of tea, handing her one without a word. They just stood there a moment, breathing in the new shape of things. I thought I would feel triumphant, she said finally, her voice soft. But instead I feel responsible. Grant smiled. Your grandfather built something meant to lift people, not crush them. Maybe that is your task now too. His words settled into her like roots. So Elena made her decision. Instead of claiming every house and business tied to the stolen land, she offered new terms. Fair ones, honest ones. No family would be thrown into the streets. No one would be stripped of dignity. But the old agreements would be rewritten in daylight and truth. She founded the Carter Foundation, named not just for her grandfather, but for every child who ever stood at the margins of a room, afraid to speak. The foundation funded a new public library built where the old railway yard once stood. It offered scholarships for local children, no matter their background. It repaired the school roof that had leaked for 10 years while the town council ignored it. And when she opened the first free reading program, people saw her not as the girl humiliated on the train platform, and not just as the woman who reclaimed her legacy. They saw her as someone building something better. Clayton Reed faded quietly from public life. The laughter he once directed at her became a memory people no longer repeated. Riverbrook itself seemed to exhale, as if releasing years of tightness in its chest. As for Elena and Grant, their bond grew not from dramatic declarations, but from shared work, shared mornings, and shared understanding. He never treated her as someone to rescue. She never treated him as someone to lean on. They simply stood beside each other, steady and equal. Sometimes, in the evenings, they walked the library halls together. Children's laughter echoed between the shelves. And every time Elena heard it, she felt the weight inside her loosen a little more. Riverbrook did not change in a day, but it changed because she stayed. And for the first time in her life, Elena belonged. The train station looked smaller than she remembered. The same wooden benches, the same chipped paint on the railing, the same echo of distant engines rolling through Riverbrook. But this time, Elena did not stand there shaking or unsure. She walked with quiet certainty, her steps steady and full. A few townspeople noticed her first. They straightened, hesitated, then offered small nods. Real nods, respectful ones. One older woman touched her chest lightly and said, "Thank you, Miss Carter, for the library. My grandson loves it there." Elena smiled, warm and gentle, and the woman smiled back, relief settling in her shoulders like she had been waiting for that moment. The wind moved softly through the station canopy as Elena paused where she once stood with tears burning behind her eyes. She remembered Clayton's voice, the laughter, the humiliation, the loneliness. And then she remembered her grandfather's letters, Grant's steady presence, the children laughing between bookshelves now built on her land. The town learning slowly to become better. She realized she was not the same person who stepped off that train months ago. She had reclaimed more than land. She had reclaimed her history, her dignity, her story. Strength is not proven by hatred. Strength is proven by rebuilding what others tried to break. It is proven by standing tall when the world expects you to bow. It is proven by choosing creation instead of destruction. Elena walked forward, the sunlight catching her face, the sound of a new train arriving in the distance. Riverbrook watched her with something close to admiration. Before we close, if this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter. And remember, what is lost can be reclaimed. What is broken can still rise.